Okay, I'm giving you 2 seconds to tell me how to say the word grapefruit in Spanish. All right, go. 1, 2. Okay, ya estuvo. Because the correct answer, at least the one I know, is toronja. But the judges here are telling me that we're also accepting pomelo. So if you said either one of those, felicidades, te debo unos gancitos. But if you had asked 10-year-old me, I would have said fruta de uva. Fruta de uva. This is not a hypothetical situation, my friends. There was one time I was at a restaurant with my grandmother and I asked her if she wanted some fruta de uva. Qué vergüenza. But hey, at least I know the difference between avergonzado and embarazado. Hey, sí, por favor, I'm not that pocho. Pendejo a veces, pero pocho, no. I mean, I feel like a native Spanish speaker might say differently because I am not one, right? Yes, I grew up surrounded by English and Spanish on the border, but I've never been able to confidently say that I'm incredibly fluent. Can I carry a conversation with my Spanish monolingual relatives? Sure. Am I able to respond to a question from my suegros? I'd like to think so. But deep down, I feel like they're always thinking, oh, pobrecito, no sabe. Because the further I get away from my Spanish, the closer I think I'm about to lose my Latino card, which I'm holding on to for dear life. But the truth is, I am the product of my third gen Mexican American circumstances. So, how can I exist between these two languages? I'm Jorge Olivares, y hoy preguntamos, how does language make me who I am? This is Hyphenación, where conversation and cultura meet. All right, I just shared a very embarrassing story about my inability to know Spanish that well. So I want to ask each of my guests if they have a similar moment, embarrassing moment, something that they're like, "Ugh, I never want to relive again when it comes to either English or Spanish." So first, excited to welcome to the program Rachel La Loca Strauss, who I must bow down to as one of the OG Latino podcasters, has paved the way for me and many others in this field. She is the host of the Latinos Out Loud podcast. She is also an adjunct professor at CUNY, which is the City University of New York. Rachel, thank you for joining me for this conversation. Can you please thank you for joining, but also tell me your most embarrassing moment. This is how we make friends nowadays.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for that really warm introduction. I'm really, really happy to be here. I have so many embarrassing language stories, but this one is still pretty fresh, and it all happened when I was maybe 7 years old, which was a really long time ago. My mother's Dominican, and I remember one time, as you know, mind you, I grew up half Jewish and half Catholic, so like just mixed race and mixed up. So we were at my tia's house and she told me in Spanish, she was like, pide la mano de tu tía. So I took my tia's hand and I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do with it now? And she was like, no, 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 no. Es que cuando tú pides la mano, tú le estás preguntando por una bendición. So like pide la mano is asking for a blessing from your tia. And I had no idea. I just thought she told me to grab my tia's hand and, you do what your mom tells you to do, no matter how weird.
I mean, I would have done the same thing. Even now, I would not have thought that that's what she was telling you to do. So, aha moments all around when it comes to language.
Totally. And then after like she told me in English what to do, I was like, oh, bendición tia. And then of course she was like, Dios te bendiga. So ever since then, I'm like, oh, that's how you pide la bendición, like the Dominican way. Got it.
Okay, okay. See, now I'm putting this in my back pocket so that way if anybody ever asks, I can say that this is what that particularly means. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Also excited to welcome to the program Angelo Colina, who is a stand-up comedian. I'd like to say I was telling the group here, my production team, that my algorithm serves me up drag queens, gay men, and Angelo Colina comedy sets. So that's how deep in I am in watching Angelo's comedy. But he is the creator of the Gente Funny comedy showcase. I hope that I kind of made your day with that. But comedy showcase that is a Spanish language comedy showcase that is touring the country right now, which is kind of fantastic. But Angelo, thank you so much for joining us. And do you have an embarrassing moment that you'd be willing to share with us?
First of all, nice to meet you both. Second, I think the reason why I come up in your grade. It might be my high waist pants or just my mustache. It's both of them. I get mixed up. I get in the mix of those
Mhm.
mixes you were mentioning. And for me, it was the other way around. So that's funny because I didn't grow up here. I've only been here for 8 years or so, 7 years. And so it wasn't that way for me. It was mostly, and when I was learning English, we were just learning. So you're kind of allowed to make mistakes. And so I didn't have that embarrassing moment. And then when I came here, I already spoke English. And so for me, it was the other way around because I used to be an English and a Spanish teacher. For me, it was how do I correct this person without making them feel, embarrassed about themselves? But the things I heard were actually the reason why I started doing stand up. Like my first show was about those mistakes. Like we call them in when we do the English lessons, we call them false friends, which are words that look like familiar to you in a language, but then they're not. And so like I had students telling me, oh teacher, I don't import. Like no me importa.
Mm.
And so how do I that so for me that was all the time how do I correct them without making them feel embarrassed? So once a student told me that in Colombia, he said, "Teacher, I don't import." And I'm like, "No, no, no, you export." And then a couple of the
Yeah.
students got the joke, and that's how he started teaching the differences. Like, hey, you can't say this because you would be saying this. So for me, it was the other way around. I was like actually the person who would be telling people how to say it in the right way. So that's funny, but I would have been your T, is what I'm trying to say.
I love it. You know what's interesting is even though my dad was a Spanish teacher, I don't have the best command of Spanish, which I've always had conversations with him about. So I actually want to start the conversation there, Rachel. If we can talk about how you feel like you have a good or maybe not so good command of Spanish, considering how you grew up.
Yeah, well, Jorge, we're more connected than you think because my father was also a Spanish teacher. Okay, that's how like my parents met. My mother didn't speak English. My father was studying to be a Spanish teacher that summer on Brighton Beach, and they hooked up. Pero that we'll save that for another episode. Um, but I feel like my command of Spanish should be so much better being the daughter of a woman born in the Dominican Republic where Spanish is her native language and the daughter of a Spanish teacher in New York City public schools for like close to 30 years. However, let me give myself some grace, okay? Um,
Hmm.
I before I took the dive into comedy, I was working a corporate gig. I was at like every Spanish language magazine. Remember magazines, like the thing that you turn
Yes.
with your
With
okay.
people in Espanol.
Yes. So I worked at People en Español for a really long time. I worked at Latina, I worked at Vanidades, a bunch of different magazines. And my command of Spanish was so much better during those years. Like I was able to read in Spanish, write in Spanish. And now I guess it's true what they say, reading is fundamental. Because now it's just not in my mental anymore. Like I find it so hard to like get words that I need, but I speak Spanglish fluently. AF.
I thank you for saying that because I always say that my first language is actually Spanglish because I don't know when Spanish happened. I don't know when English happened. It just ta-da! I knew both languages somehow when I was 3 or 4, whatever age it was.
I'm on the other side in the sense it might be a generational thing because as far as I know, what I used to see from outside, I lived in Venezuela for 20 years, then I lived in Colombia for 2 years, then I came here to States. Um, what I used to see was that there was some type of shame between, well, coming from the Latinos who grew up in Latin America to the ones who were born in the States and didn't speak Spanish fluently. And so that's what it is. I don't think there should be any type of shame on not being fluent because at the same time, the way you speak, it just has like you just spoke like Dominican Spanish like a while ago, and that's just a lot more than anything else. That's as pure as it gets. And so I don't think there should be any type of shame. And it's the same the other way around when people are it's I see that a lot now at the shows. A lot of people bring their partners who are, let's say they have a white husband and he's learning Spanish, and so this Colombian girl brings him to the show and he's learning Spanish and he says a word in Spanish and everyone's like, yeah, or they're laughing. They're like we're encouraging people to learn, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't happen the other way around. and it should, because when people are not learn speaking English fluently, it's like, hey, that's a second language. So I think that's what it is. I think we should give more credit to ourselves than what we think. I don't think there should be any type of. I think we're killing it.
I want to talk about the places where we do feel comfortable speaking Spanish, speaking English, speaking Spanglish, whatever iteration of language we want. And Angela, you were just talking about, and something that I mentioned was this Gente Funny showcase. It is an all Spanish language show. So talk about that, your choice to use Spanish in a professional setting.
To me, it wasn't a lot that much about like how formal it would be, or how professional, but about how funny can it be? Because I started doing stand up comedy in Salt Lake City, Utah. That I was speaking English at the time, and I would do the shows in English. And I still do comedy. I do stand up in English every once in a while, but I just realized it wouldn't be the things I find funny won't translate. And it's not about situations, because that's not what it is. It's not language, it's culture. And so, like, I'm way more familiar with like Latino culture, and I'm like in love with it, with all of different nationalities, and I try to learn a lot. And so what I do, it's like it doesn't make it, it's really not funny if I go to, I don't know, the Upper West Side and I'm doing a show in English and I make an impression of the Argentinian accent. It doesn't really translate because we're not aware of it. Whereas with the if I do it in Spanish about the Argentinian or the Dominican, or I speak about our differences, it automatically translates because we share a lot more of the references. And that would happen to me as an audience member too. I would go to a show in English and I would miss a lot of the references because I didn't grow up here, or just because the language itself, the cadence of it doesn't work for me as much. So it's about language and culture more than anything else.
Hmm. Rachel, you are somebody who has had a microphone, and I love that you could see the bedazzled microphone. If you're watching us on YouTube, there's a beautifully pink bedazzled microphone in front of Rachel. But we are in a beautiful position in that we do have microphones in front of us. I mean, Angelo too, when he does his stand up, but like we can project whatever we want to on this microphone, whether it's English or Spanish. So, how do you make the choice on what language comes out when you do record in front of that pink bedazzled microphone?
I think in English and I translate to Spanish, but sometimes the slang is so much easier in español. Tú me entiendes, loco? Que, like right then and there, like for emphasis, the Dominicanisms work really well for me, Loco, ven acá. Tú te has pasado. Like things like that really just se me sale la
Ya
boca.
tú sabes.
Ya tú sabes, loco,
Hmm.
ya tú sabes cómo es, qué es lo que. Eh, but yeah, like I
I'm
think
so excited.
English, I'm excited too. This is a topic that I really get to talk about. We're really dissecting it here like a science project, which is fascinating. Um, yeah, so I tend to like think in English, and let me tell you, I'm the most under pressure in front of family. I feel like I have to say the right vocabulary word. I'm terrible at conjugating verbs and like tenses in Spanish. It's so hard. But I could say the alphabet in Spanish in like under 10 seconds. But like the English comes out, I'm more comfortable. But at times I do get a guest on the podcast whose first language is Spanish, and I want to make them comfortable. So as silly as I sound, and like as I do a lot of this, like sí, ¿cuál es la palabra? No sé la palabra, so le voy a decir en English. The
Hmm.
sentences are so much longer.
It's so interesting because I sometimes have to put myself in positions where the Spanish sounds familiar. So for the longest time, I would go to Spanish Catholic mass because I knew the prayers, I knew
Ooh.
like what the priest was going to say. Just I was able to surround myself and feel comfortable in a language that I don't always feel comfortable in. But I hate that it's really with my family, like the people who shouldn't judge you, even though they do judge you and bully you and do all the things like before anybody else does. Like I didn't think that I would feel so vulnerable around them speaking Spanish, but that's exactly who I hate speaking Spanish with because of the like, oh, poor guy, we didn't teach him right. Oh, this is a failure on us because he doesn't know the language of his grandmother or grandfather or whatever antepasado is the one who spoke Spanish the most. So I wonder for you, Angelo, if you had it where maybe your family felt a particular way about your command of English, or if there was any pressure from them about how to speak both languages fluently, or maybe even another language fluently.
Um, well, I guess that's the thing. My family is they're also immigrants, and so they came here as soon as I did. They actually needed to get caught up with it, like my mom did. She wasn't planning on leaving Venezuela, and she had to. I'm lucky enough that I was already a grown up when I came here. I don't think, and but going back to it, funny enough, you would think that the reason why you're not understanding a lot of the times is because you don't fully have the command of the language, and a lot of the times that's not it. I constantly speak about it. I have a lot of my audiences. Most of my audience would be either Puerto Rican, Dominican, but a lot of it in a lot of cities is mostly Mexican. And I speak about that a lot about how I had to adapt myself when I was in Salt Lake City, Utah, where I lived, because there's no Caribeños in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so when I was in Utah, I had to speak. That's the time I realized, oh, people speak slowly. And so it's not the language itself. If you put the first time Mexican ladies in front of a Dominican lady, there's no message across there. No message is coming across. Like they don't understand each other because Dominicans are faster. And so I don't, again, I wouldn't say, yes, part of it is the language, but a lot of it is uh, being like feeling familiar with the culture, knowing that the S's are not pronounced just the same way Rachel did Español, like things like that. When we learn English, we have the same things. I would realize how kids in Venezuela would say Spider-Man, Star Wars when they're learning English. And then that wouldn't happen in Colombia. And so, because they actually pronounce the S. And so there's that, you also see that here. So that's why I tell people all the time, you want to understand a Dominican, you don't only have to listen to Juan Luis Guerra, you have also to listen to Dembow, El Alfa, Rochi. Like, listen, you're going to
I
feel the flow. I'm telling you, as soon as you speak to one, you'll get it too. And so, same way with the Mexican culture. I think it's yes, it is language, but it's a lot more culture than we would think. Yeah.
It is. I will say I did feel very good when my father, who again is a Spanish speaker, native Spanish speaker, first language was Spanish, he could not understand my super in my first apartment in Washington Heights in New York, which is very heavily Dominican. So when my dad left this conversation, he's like, I have no idea what that man said. It's like, I feel validated that it's not just me who struggles when it's not the Spanish that you're used to, or it's not the language, the dialect that you're used to, which for me, it's this very specific Mexican border fronteriza Spanish, which we make up a lot of words. I think that's the best part about language is that it's so fluid and you can make up words. I'm curious, Rachel, if you've noticed that, especially growing up in New York, there's so many different Latinos that you can experience in New York. Just seeing how distinct your accent was, or how special it was in comparison to other Latinos.
Yeah, I get Brooklyn right away. People somehow know that I'm from freaking Brooklyn. I'm like, forget about it. How? I don't understand. What are you talking about? Uh, yeah, like, hey, can I get some water? And they're like, you're from Brooklyn, aren't you? Yeah, I really try my hardest to represent, for the cultura, as you were saying earlier. And it's beyond just sounding Dominican or Rican or whatever it is. What comes out of my mouth, I think, is New York, but I don't really identify that much with like sounding Dominican. Like I could sound Dominican sometimes, true talk, but like I also people tell me like, "Oh, you must be Puerto Rican." I'm like, "No, not at all." Or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I get Sicilian. I don't even get Latino. They're like, "Oh, you're some kind of Mediterranean or something, right?" I'm like, no, far from it. Like I'm just like a mixed breed girl with a little bit of everything, un sancocho, if you will. Um, but yeah, I don't lead with with that, you know? But I will say, when I start like singing my dembow, my toquisha, you know, you mentioned Rochi, coño, pero yo me siento como una dominicana pura, loco.
No, es que en español que se te sale. En inglés, no, en inglés you could be, you're very New York en inglés. Pero en español, sancocho. Like, as soon as you do una sola palabra, dijiste, sancocho, and I'm like, Dominican.
For
Not
real?
because of the word, but
I didn't
because,
even
yeah.
hear it.
Oh, you're very, yeah, I cannot tell you how Dominican you are.
Seriously,
I
you
could probably
guys?
say your family's here from Santo Domingo or El Cibao, one of the
Okay,
two.
I love
But
that. I don't hear that
yeah,
myself. You know, you never hear what you
yeah,
sound like, right? Like my
yeah.
students say that
Mhm.
all the time, like, "Oh, I don't like my voice." I'm like, "That's because you're not really hearing it, like scientifically. Like, there's like an, you know, something in your ear that
Mhm.
distorts it a little bit." But like, I don't think I sound Dominican. I'm so proud. Let me get my guida. Hold on. I'm so happy.
But I feel
Yes!
like this is
Thank
I feel
you.
oh, hey! Just like, I am loving this whole
This is
experience.
so
Uh,
great.
so I wanna share this quick story of when I was 22 years old and I had first moved to New York, my first broadcasting on-air job. I was really excited because I was gonna be able to do something that my parents could listen to, and I would be able to say, you know, Xorje Olivares every time I signed off on these broadcasts. But very quickly, I had to have a conversation with my older white supervisor who said I needed to anglicize my name. That if I was going to do anything on air, I had to say Jorge Olivares, which
Wow.
even now coming out of my mouth sounds really weird. And this was a shock to me because I've grown up on the Texas Mexico border. Everybody knows how to say my name. I was surrounded by a bunch of Latinos growing up, so it never felt weird for me to say it how I was taught it. So I, since then, since I was 22, have had to be very intentional and deliberate with how I say my name because I need folks to know that I am from the border. I'm Mexicano, like Tejano. I've got all this stuff behind me, and so definitely my relationship to my name and to language has shifted over the years. So I want to ask you, Rachel, if you've had a similar situation where your relationship with either language has changed a bit.
Yeah, you know, you actually like struck a chord with the name. Cuz I feel less Latina when I say my actual government name without my stage name baked in, where it's like, "Hi, I'm Rachel Strauss." You know? Like I don't know how many I can't tell you how many job interviews I've been on where I show up, I'm like, "Hi, I'm Rachel Strauss." And they look at me like, "No, you can't be. You don't look like a Strauss. Wait, who what are you?" Exactly, you know, with their eyes. I don't think that's like allowed to be said by like HR and stuff, but like, you know, I get that feeling like, oh, you weren't expecting a mixed race girl who's half Latina and whose father is Jewish. I get it. Let me tell you a little bit about me. So then when I do say, oh, I'm Rachel La Loca Strauss, that pretty much encapsulates who I am to the T. I am this mixed breed that loves both of her cultures, that fully embraces being Dominican and like a descendant of Eastern European Jew, you know, Russian and a whole bunch of other stuff mixed in with the borscht. And like it's the name for me. I never really gave it thought until you brought up how you say your name. And I do say La Loca with intent. Because I could easily say Rachel La Loca Strauss, you know, but then I don't sound like me. Okay. It's Rachel La Loca Strauss.
Hmm. See, because the thing is, it is what feels unnatural. Because I've never in my life said my name is Jorge. You've
Mm,
never in your life have not said la loca in the accent that you have.
right.
So Angelo, did you like just thinking about accents, names, how you present yourself to the world? Have you had to contend with that and like deal with some of the inner workings of how you feel about how you express yourself?
I think at the beginning of my immigrant career in the US, I had to. Like, as soon as I was in Salt Lake City, Utah, yes, I had to pronounce, I would say Angelo. But if I'm here in New York and I do comedy, listen, like a lot of the times it's like, it's my show. I'm doing my show in Spanish. It says en español, it says everything. I'm gonna just speak the way I speak because that's what the actual thing people are paying for. They want to see that part of themselves, even not even mine. And so they also introduce themselves, pronouncing their name how they normally wouldn't do it. That I do see. That I know they would normally say, "Oh, my name is Maria," but when they see me, they go like, mi nombre es Maria, mucho gusto." Like that's it's like, okay, I'm free. I won't be judged here. And so when I have the chance to do this outside in other cities, yes, I of course sometimes I try to sound like I have been here for longer if I'm, in other places, because you feel it. I've been to Kansas City, I've been to Louisville, Kentucky. And it's not as welcoming, I don't know if I would get away to say Angelo El Loco Colina.
Do it. Let's
But
see what
when,
happens.
Try
by the way,
it.
Rachel, when you just said La Loca, that was also Dominican, the way you said La Loca, you know? Yeah,
I feel so
emotional
Jamaican
support
right
with it.
now. Oh my God, my mom should be so proud.
You should
See, but
always,
this is
yes, it's the best.
this is what I love because I'm Mexican American, Dominican American, somebody from Venezuela who has that very distinct, like, we are all from our own distinct backgrounds, and yet look at how much we're having fun with language, with culture, with identity. And I'm curious, Rachel, I mean, your podcast has been around for such a long time, helping Latinos feel like they have a safe space to see who they want to see and be who they want to be. How does that feel knowing that you, with your voice, the voice of your guests, that you were able to connect with us and connect with people that span Latin cultures?
Thank you so much for saying that. I am so proud of Latinos Out Loud bars. That rhymed. Uh, I did not know that it was going to naturally evolve into this platform that elevates us. It started out with this experiment of, hey, I'm a sketch comedian based in New York City. I wonder if that would translate over the podcast airwaves. F it. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. And then we started interviewing our friends who are doing amazing things in the world, not just showbiz. And I didn't even realize, I'm like, oh my God, my friends are so talented. So I just went through the whole Rolodex. I'm dating myself, went through the whole contacts list, whatever you want to call it, kids, and went through the whole TikTok. I don't know, went through the whole Instagram friends list. And also, like, I get this all the time, y'all. Like, especially from the bigger stars, they're like, "Oh, I could really be who I am on this show. I can throw out a wepa. I could throw out a I coño." You're like, this isn't Access Hollywood. Like you could be Latino as right now if you want to be. So thank you so much for the shout out.
Of course, because I think it's so special that what comedy does, what podcasting does, what media does today, representation does today, is you hear somebody who sounds like you. And as much as it is about seeing somebody who looks like you, it also helps to hear someone who sounds like you. Because there were a lot of people who did not sound like border Spanish speaking Jorge, and that was tough. So just being exposed to that helps. And I feel like the thing that has also helped is I've just like me vale madre now when I speak Spanish sometimes. Like I've had to make certain agreements with myself about like it's okay to be embarrassed. It's okay to kind of walk around with your tail between your legs. Just live. So I wonder, Angelo, if you've had these moments where you had to throw all of that out the window, any preconceived feelings, any hangups that it just didn't need to happen for you.
I think that when I was still doing comedy in English, like full time, or when I was trying to do it full time, there was a time where I just didn't feel, I was like, why is this not translating what I think? Because I was also creating like content on like Twitter at the time and Instagram, and I would get like nice feedback. And I would be like, why is it not translating to what I'm doing live? And so it was all about language. And so when I was like committed to it, and again, a lot of the times it would be like, oh, why don't you do it in this? Why don't you do it in English? Why don't you do it in English? And we started doing like 20, 15 people shows, and I had the chance last year to do the Gramercy Theater here in New York in Spanish. I had two shows at the Netflix is a Joke Comedy Festival in Spanish. Uh, and I think part of it was just the people around me. And again, it's the privilege of living here in New York City, where only the attempt of doing something with enough passion is going to be applauded. Like people are going to cheer you up and they're going to be supportive. And so I think New York did it for me. Like just people here were like, dale, cabrón, dale, métele, como que dale, láigala, dicen la gente del Cibao. In Dominican Republic, they say láigala. Like métele, like go. And so that thing, it would be, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing 100% if it wasn't because of the community. And there is a strong one. There are strong that like maybe we're not completely unified, and nobody wants that like from the others, because it would be, we would be unstoppable. But when we finally do, I've had the chance to be in 34 states in this country doing stand up in Spanish. So I know what's happening in the other cities, how far behind we can be sometimes in a lot of topics, because that's also the reality of it. We have the chance of being in New York, you're in San Francisco. We're speaking about things where, we've been speaking about things for longer than a lot of other people. A lot of other people don't have the chance to even speak Spanish, like they would be ashamed of it because it wasn't that long ago where it was actually even prohibited. And so it's all about being a little bit more, having a little bit more empathy for those who can't be themselves yet, and be more welcoming. Because once we are all, that's what does it for all of us, I
Yeah.
think.
I thank you for bringing up the notion of privilege. Like we are privileged to be able to have this open space, to be able to speak English and Spanish as fluidly as we are, and not feel like we're going to be, discriminated. I mean, we might still get discriminated against, but like that there's certain powers that come with our ability to navigate both languages as easily as we can. And part of the thing that I love about language is that you can always mess around with it and make new words and do new things that just feel right for you. So I want to end by asking, especially as the host of a show called Hyphenación, which we made up and it's fun. Uh, Rachel, is there a word or phrase that you love in Spanish that just doesn't hit in English? That nobody, when you're trying to do the literal translation, como que no.
Totally. And it's so Dominican. And I love to motivate others. So I'm always like, ponte en la pila. Ponte en la pila, loco. Ponte en la pila. Which I
That's a
guess
good
Wait,
one.
a literal translation of that is what, to put yourself on a
Put on your
battery?
put on
Or
your
put on your
batteries.
battery.
Put in your batteries.
in plural, batteries.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. For me, it's one that it's usually the it's like Venezuela, Cuba, República Dominicana, Puerto Rico, Colombia también. We say a lot, ya tú sabes,
Oh, that's a good one.
or ya tú
Mhm.
sabes. And then, but Dominicans have one now that is tú supiste, but
Oh,
without the S, tú supiste. They say,
yes.
see, if you say, now I'm giving you this, Orion, use it. If a Dominican ever tells you, ya tú sabes, if you say tú supiste, they'll be blown away. Because
Right.
tu supiste
Write
implies
this
you've
down.
been knowing for longer.
Tú
So
supiste.
that's my favorite one at the moment.
Mine is, there's a phrase that's just like, nada que ver, and it translates to, like, nothing to see, but it's really not that. It's like, this is of so little importance, it's so dumb that, like, it's not worth your
Nada que
time.
ver. You say nah sometimes,
Nada que
yeah,
ver,
without the D.
nada
Nada
que
que
ver.
Yeah,
ver.
not que ver. Not que ver.
I
Yeah.
have had such a fun time with they're all my new friends. I'm forcing them to be my friends, my Latino
Uh-huh.
friends
Yay.
here in this world. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation about the beauty of language, the power of language, how it unites, how it distinguishes us, how it's just a beautiful way of identifying yourself. So thank you both for what you do, and thank you so much for being a part of this really fruitful, fantastic conversation.
Thank you. This has been so fun. Congrats to you both. Let's get it. We are hot right now. So I'm here to support. La puerta ya está abierta. So come on and have some sancocho, loco.
I'll take it.
Tú supiste, mi loca. Tú supiste, mi loca. Rachel.
I
Un
love it.
abrazo. Thank you so much for having me too.
Fuerte.
Thank you. And if you have wonderful things to say, I will always take wonderful things that are said about me and our show. Please email us at hyp@kqed.org. And for more information about our guests, you can just go to our show notes, including where you can see Angelo in a city near you and how you can listen to Latinos Out Loud. But until next time, mi gente, peace. You know I couldn't let you go just yet. I wanted to say thank you so much for supporting us on this first season of Hyphenación. It's been such a joy to make. And we do have a small request from us to you. If you liked what we created, if you felt heard or seen in any way, if it made you feel something, please leave a comment on this video or any of our other videos. And if you're an audio head, audio girly, podcast listener, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. It helps people find us. All right, amigas. See you soon.